Ladies, are you tired of being told that procrastination is just wrong? Do you want to know how to make the perfect excuse for whatever it is you want to get out of? Welcome to the Rebel Tribe, where we are going to answer those questions for you today. My guest is Betty Withrow, author of the Essential Excuse Handbook, 77 Ways to Keep from Doing Anything at All. She's taken a deep dive into these excuses, what they're really doing, and what you need to do about it, because you didn't really think we were going to encourage you to procrastinate now, did you? Betty is an entrepreneur. She's been one since the age of 16, working in ranching, food service, a fashion original, and now she's a writer, and her book is fabulous. I will give a link to it at the end of this interview. You're going to love it. But right now, we're going to talk to Betty. So Betty, welcome to the Rebel Tribe.
All right. Thank you so much, Melody Ann. And it's an honor to be here. As we know, it's been quite a day already. So we don't need any excuse for being the way that we are. We left that one behind earlier in the day. Yeah, so my book, The Essential Excuse Handbook, I'll hold it up and see if it comes through and with Zoom.
That's a little.
Anyway, as you mentioned, it's a handbook of excuses. And people have told me only 77. I'm like, well, I know there's a universe full of excuses, but we have to start somewhere. So I started with the ones that came directly to mind. What inspired me to write this book is that I'm a writing coach, and I had this friend who kept coming up with fantastic ideas for book and wonderful titles that make you laugh just thinking about it. And then she would have some reason why she couldn't do it, and it was getting quite annoying. So I decided that rather than being angry at my friend for being who she is, I would use it as a creative way to do something with the energy. And I had already been speaking about procrastination a little bit here and there. And so I had a short list of excuses, and then many more came. And then I started realizing that I was really an expert in this because I had used or accepted all these excuses myself. And that wasn't the most comfortable thing I've ever had to look at, but it was great to, check that out and see what the excuses challenge you to notice about your life. It's true that if you don't want to get anything done, this book will really help you to avoid getting anything done, because you can take the excuses at face value, which is how I present them originally, and just run with that. Like, excuse number one, it's just not fun. Okay, if it's just not fun, then, let's just be done. Don't do it, right? That's not fun. I'm not doing that. But for the purpose of this interview, I decided I would focus on some of my favorite excuses, the ones that really hang you up, and that also contain deep meaning. See, that's the power of excuses, that every time you make an excuse, you're actually opening the door to becoming aware of something that you've been avoiding, which is, what excuses are all about. And they say they're going to really help you avoid the thing that you don't want to do. And they're going to make it easy for you. But what they're really going to do is they're going to make it easy for you to miss the boat and not have your life work at all. So instead of that, my approach in this book is to give the excuse at first value, at first, this first version, and then go into it. So I'll just read to you about excuse number 22, and you'll get an idea of how I roll. And let's just wing it, as we were saying. Excuse number 22 is, why me? When you really feel that you don't deserve the situation you're in, you're arguing with the whole universe. That's a lot of work. And you're up against a very serious adversary, so it might be better to learn to cooperate. Why me? It's easy to say, why me? Everybody has something that happens in their life that you're like going, this is not fair. This is not just, like literally, why me? Okay. Why not you is the next question. What is it about you that makes this situation a unique opportunity that only you can understand and make into its best? Whatever's going on is happening as a display of potential epic life and motion, and you can be part of that. If there's something that's true and beautiful and you can make it happen, that's why you. And there's always that something. So the question, why me, can be turned around into, where's the opportunity here? What can I do here that nobody else can do? And that, like, that is opens a door to a different way of looking at the entire display. What situation has turned up for you that you didn't expect that is challenging for you today?
Yeah, I was gonna say, you need to
Right,
ask that question.
right. Well, I'm asking it of our audience, and and also of myself, and I have a dim view. I mean, a dim idea of what you had to deal with today that you certainly didn't expect. So what is there to do with that? A lot of the things around excuses have to do with your attitude, and in some of the excuses I talk about how you're you're most likely you're cutting yourself short by making this excuse and depriving yourself of your power in the situation. That's what the excuses are all about. They come in acting like they're your friend, and they're going to really, they're going to take care of this for you. Yeah, they'll take care of it for you. They'll make sure that you don't get what you want, and you never accomplish the things that are important to you, and many other dire consequences like destroying relationships and keeping you stuck. And it gets pretty dang ugly when you really check that out. So the next question is, what are you being asked to do, either by yourself or by others, and who would you need to be in order for that to happen? And what would happen if you became that person? This is another layer of what excuses are about, is keeping you where you are so that you don't have to face your discomfort and make the decisions that are going to give you the opportunities that you say you want. But also that there's going to be consequences to those excuses, like people might not like you if you outgrow them. That's one of the consequences of getting what you want, is that people who aren't willing to make the same kinds of choices aren't going to like you. And you may have to, bargain with yourself over which one is more important to you. Getting what you want, or being liked for not getting what you want. To me, that's not much of a choice. But again, I became an expert in this by doing exactly that for a long period of time in my life. Just kind of pretend, there's a great question that one of the coaches I know asked, and it's, what are you pretending not to know? So the excuses are about that. You're pretending not to know that, for instance, in the case of excuse number 22 of why me, you're pretending not to know that you have power in the situation. And you're saying life happens to me instead of I create my life. This is a really profound choice that each one of these excuses offers to you. So that's one aspect of it.
So I love the fact that what you're saying is the excuses, it all depends on how you look at it. Like today, I
Yeah.
could have just totally caught, and I had legit excuses. Okay. Mine weren't even excuses. Mine were legit. And I could have
Yeah.
just as easily messaged you and said, I'm not doing this today,
Hmm.
and just been done with it. Or you can go in with the attitude, what did I message you? I'm game if you are. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's how you perceive what it is that you're saying, whether it's an excuse or whether it's a self searching question to help you grow.
Mhm. Yeah.
Am I
Yeah.
making sense here? So like
Yes,
when
you're making total sense, at least to me. Okay. And I hope to your audience too, because the place that you and I are at right now in this interview is that we both had a long day. And as you said, we could have said, well, I just can't handle it, I'm throwing in the towel, right? That was there. It could happen. And instead of that, we said, okay, we're at the edge. We don't know how this is going to go, and we're doing it anyway. So that's the choice to grow through the uncertainty, the not knowing, the saying no excuse will do, and just going through that instead, making things happen.
Okay, so would you say that's like for every excuse works that way? Because I'm thinking back when I was trying to write my first book, it took me forever. Okay. I
Uh-huh.
thought my poor editor and publisher were going to disown me because they're like, are you done with it yet? And I always had some reason why, like, you know, um, I'm too, what was a big one? I'm too tired after coming home because I was still working. I was working at the time, and I'm too
Mhm,
tired after working all day to even sit
mhm.
down and write a few pages. I just can't. I just can't.
Right.
And so I didn't. Okay.
Mhm, mhm,
And I don't think that, I think the real reason was I was not right. It took me a while to figure out that the real reason was I was not writing the right book. It actually took me a conversation with somebody else
mhm.
who, because I had visions of writing the great American novel, and of
Uh-huh.
course that did not work. But I actually was at an event, and one of the speakers there yanked me aside, and he's like, "Write what you know." And I
Yeah.
said, "But there's 100 books on network marketing." That was my next excuse. There are 100 books on network marketing. Why should I, why should I write one more?
Mhm.
And his words to me kind of changed how I looked at everything after that. His words to me were, there are 100 books out there on network marketing, but none of them are yours. And I was like, oh, yeah.
Yes. Yes. And that's so true. It's like nobody else knows what you know. I mean, people will say things like, I had somebody yesterday at my writing retreat say, I've had a really boring life. And I'm like, no, it's your attitude that makes you think that your life is boring. In fact, she's had a very interesting life. I mean, how many people have been a female welder on an aircraft carrier, right? Among other
That
things.
I know.
I mean, that's not exactly boring or ordinary, and the thing is, she just had this kind of gray filter going on. And luckily the other women, we all called her out and said, come on, that's not real. And so, again, back to the book thing, nobody else can write the book that you can write about network marketing because of the uniqueness of the range of experiences that you've had, your insights into human nature, and and other variables that will make your book different from anybody else's book. I mean, as a writing coach and doing different things. I write for people, I write with people, I edit their work, whatever. There is never any project that even slightly resembles another one, even if they're in the same genre. There's no two authors that have the same personality or the same take or the same reason why they want to write their book. None of that. So I'm like an air traffic controller in that way because there's all these different things going through all the time. And so I have tremendous respect for the uniqueness of different people's points of view. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to let them off the hook if they're lying to themselves. I'm not going to flat out say to somebody, usually, yeah, you're lying to yourself. I may say something a lot more like, well, tell me more about that, so that they can unpack their own stuff and then begin to see, kind of sneaking in the back door with how to address their excuse, without saying, you're using excuse number 38 or something like that. That's a little too harsh, but yeah. You see how we're just kind of going off on every tangent. I love this. This is very creative.
So you hear this, my budding authors out there, because I know there are a few of you that subscribe to this. And I've heard a couple of you mention, I want to write my book, but well, now you can go look up excuse number, whatever it is. Okay.
Uh-huh,
Whatever, which one
uh-huh.
you're using, and
Right,
stop it. Okay.
right,
Just stop it.
exactly.
Write the book. Write the book. Betty will help you. because not
And
only did she
or
write this book about excuses, she is a writing coach. And I would really love to hear a little bit more about that, because I did have a writing coach when I started the network marketing book, because I had never written a book like that before. I had
Mhm,
no idea where to
mhm.
even start. And I had a coach and she helped me quite a bit. So what exactly does a writing coach do?
Well, what my approach to it is that I want to meet you where you are and grow with you. Because as I mentioned, no two people are at all in the same place. Sometimes I work with someone who has only an idea and help them to develop that idea, and through the process of creating an outline, which really clarifies things. And once the outline is in place, then that really helps to build the momentum, because it gives a framework for the different ideas that you want to tie together. Excuse me. And it allows the freedom for those ideas to grow into the space that you've created. That's one thing that I do. And then, by contrast, I worked with someone who had a completely developed manuscript. The plot and the book itself was essentially written, a fiction book, and it needed work in terms of developing the characters and understanding their motivations. So there were some issues with the plot hinges and time sequences, flashbacks, and things like that. So we got that to be clarified, because my goal is that the reader can just fall into the book and they're not hung up on the structure of the book or saying, why is it like that? I mean, in some cases, you do want people to be saying, why is it like that? But in most cases, especially in a novel or something, you want them to just be in the story. And then the question of, why is she like that is not, it's not written down, but it's occurring to them. But meanwhile, they're continuing to read as the story grows, if all that makes sense. But so, I'm thinking about the most recent people I've worked with. People think that there's writer's block, and I don't believe in writer's block. I believe that it's life block, and it's manifesting in your writing, because your writing contributes to your life and your life contributes to your writing. The best writing takes elements directly from a person's own life and takes it into the story. Like in the retreat that I had yesterday, there were two fiction authors there. I've worked with both of them. And we ended up talking at length about the motivation of the characters and the fact of distancing yourself from the one woman is writing something. They both had elements of their own life. But in order to handle what the one woman was writing about, she backed off and wrote about it in the third person. So then we were talking about the motivation of the character, knowing that we were talking about this woman's own life. So that it takes all these different forms. And then I also work with people in business books. The first question that I ask anybody is, what do you want this to do? Because I was trained in rhetoric and the art of persuasion at a young age, and creative writing and other things. And in rhetoric, you really want to know what is the end result out of the whole thing that you want. So it has different layers. Like, what do you want for your reader? What do you want for the world? And what do you want for yourself? And each one of those has a different answer, but they're all related. And so when I'm able to really understand how the messaging works and who it's for, then we can construct the language that we need so that it accomplishes that. Like, I sometimes teach business writing, and I have three, what I call the three golden apples. And the first one is to speak in the language of your market, which means getting to know who it is that you want to influence, what you want them to do, and how do they roll? Literally, where do they hang out? Who are they? How do they communicate? What's their community like? What's important to them? And so that's what that involves, the language of the market. So that tells you how to speak with them. The second element is positioning yourself as the go-to expert based on your experience, and presenting your experience and your qualifications in such a way that people really get it, that you understand what they need and that you can make that happen. And the third element is focusing on outcomes, where you talk about what is the actual result that you're going to produce for people, and future pacing, thinking ahead of them, even so that they get that you have bought into their vision and you want to help them grow into that vision. So those three elements all tie together, and it's in reality, we have to start with the outcome. That's why I always say, what do you want this to do? So then after we've kind of done all of that and we have a basic framework, then we go back to what do you want this to do, and see if what we've come up with is in alignment with that stated goal.
All I can say is I'm glad you didn't work with me. I'm sitting here when you're talking about outlines going, outline? What's an outline?
Well, see, that's the thing, people don't, you don't have to know. I mean, that's what support is for. I can show you how to make an outline. I mean, a lot of times I've written outlines for people.
Good try.
I did a ghostwrite for a woman who had a very difficult personal story that she needed to get told, and it was so emotional that she couldn't write her own outline. She told me the story. I wrote the outline, and she was crying while we were reading the outline together, even though I had written it and she hadn't. But it made it so the book could happen, because then I would say, okay, tell me what you want to talk to me about today. And she would tell me the story, I would record it, and then write the chapter, and I would know where it went in the sequence. So as we did that, it became a healing process in many ways. And it became a miracle. It's just basically a miracle story. It's published, and it led to her seeing her life and the experiences that she was describing and that she wanted the world to know about in a completely different way. It elevated her vision of what she could do with her life. And I'm really proud of her for following through, and also of what we did together. It came out great.
Well, I
But
write.
an outline is just basically, okay, what kind of a structure is going to support what you want to happen? And that's why what do you want this to do is such an important question. Because, like, say it's a 3-minute commercial. Okay, what are the 3 points we're going to hit in 3 minutes, and how are we going to do that? That would be 1, 2, and 3 in the outline, and then the sub the intervals between those 3 numbers are represented with letters, and that would be, why is this important? Who is this for? How can you get in touch with me? The different points that you would want to bring up in those three points.
I promise never to hire you as my writing coach, because we will drive each other crazy because I am neither that structured nor that organized, but I am
But
working
see,
on the
that
second
you
one,
don't
and I
have to be.
probably.
That's the kind of support that I can give people. I have this one guy that has such a chaotic thing going on that I'm hoping I'm going to be able to help him. Okay, let's just say that. He's very, very brilliant, and his thought process is all over the place. He's kind of, the first thing we did is I said, okay, I proposed this outline. I gave him the outline. He proceeded to basically ignore it, but
My kind of guy.
it was there, for him to refer to. And then I think it helped him realize, this is what I really want to do. I'm like, okay, good. I mean, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to help you do what you want to do. That's the thing, So, yeah.
Well, I'm working on my second one, and I'm not going to ask you to coach me because, like I said, we'll kill each other. But I am going to have you edit it when it's all done. So, because you also edit, so please, what I had an editor
Yeah.
for my last one, and I don't know, in some ways she did exactly what I expected an editor to do, and in other ways I was like, what are you doing? So what as an editor, what do you do? What does an editor do?
Well, right now I'm actually editing some chapters for an anthology book. And the first two chapters that I've gotten have been pretty well articulated. So it's kind of basic, fixing the grammar and making sure that the points are clear. And in other cases, I've already been warned by the publisher, some of them are going to be basically a rewrite. But what an editor really does is goes through to my aim as an editor. I'll just say that because editors do have they're like writers. There's no two alike. But what I do is I want it to be that your grammar is correct enough that a person can read it without becoming confused by a sentence. I'm a grammar nerd. I've been accused of being the grammar police and worse than that. And that's okay. That's not for
That's good.
everybody. But I love grammar because it supports the meaning of what your thought is. And, little stupid little things that, like prepositions and prepositional phrases and things like that. They may seem trivial, but the point of it is that it can make it easier for the reader to absorb the thought. And in my vision of what writing is that it's taking the thought that's in your mind and putting it on a page so that it can reach other minds intact. That's the whole point. And so as an editor, that's actually my goal, is to be invisible as the editor. You shouldn't be going, oh, the editors took away the voice. That's the biggest complaint I hear from people about editors they've had with before, is it doesn't sound like me after they went through that. Here's an example. I'm finalizing some edits on a paranormal book, and it has a lot of grammatically incorrect stuff in it. But if I was to edit it so that these old Southern boys were talking proper, it would suck. So I'm not doing that. I'm making it so that you can identify with them, you can get where they're at, and if they talk slang or they swear or whatever, that's how they are. I'm not gonna fix that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, because I mean, and I loved her. She didn't do anything wrong, but she actually helped me out quite a bit, because she would do things like she would come back and and give me ideas on, did you know there's this research study that backs up what you're saying here, and she would, and you should include a little paragraph about that here, and I was
Mhm.
like, oh cool, I didn't know this study existed, and thank you, and yeah, you're right,
Yeah.
that would make a good little piece to put in here. So I mean, she went that far. So I was
Yeah,
like,
that's
that's
a
awesome.
deeper kind that's really cool. That's developmental editing, and that's really getting into the topic. Yeah, that's excellent.
So yeah, so
But
I mean,
that's
I loved her, but it just kind of surprised me that that she was actually out there researching, I guess, or maybe she
yeah.
already knew. I don't know. She wasn't in the business, so I don't know, but it kind of
Uh-huh.
surprised me that she was actually out there researching, I guess, and finding information like that to share with me so that I could, make the book even better. And I was like, well, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the writing retreat that you did, because we have discussed in the past, I have some author friends, and we have discussed having what we call the writer retreat, but after listening to you, it probably wasn't. It's probably more like a bunch of ladies just sitting around working on their books at a cabin by the lake. Right? So it sounds
That's
like
a
you
writing
actually
retreat.
have like an actual writing retreat. What are these like? Tell me, because this might be cool.
Well, again, there's no two alike. Two of the women who were there were three women there. Two of them knew each other from the last session that we had. Another one had come down from Canada to here in California, and she and her husband made a week-long vacation out of it. Um, and the Canadian lady was the instigator. She asked me when was I having another one. I said, well, when can you come? So that's why we ended up having it just now. And she had just uploaded her book for the second time after she had published it, got some feedback from her book club, went after that feedback and re-uploaded. So we talked about her book, and then everybody, the other two wanted to know about the book, and she went, oh. So she told them the basics of the book, and then we started talking about the characters and their motivations. We talked about why do we write, and that was the one thing that was really cool about this author, was that she came in with some of the most amazing questions for everybody, like constantly questions that really made you think. And at one point she said, well, before I had the motorcycle accident, I wasn't like this, but now I have no filters, so I'll ask anybody anything. And so it was very thought provoking. And then the other lady whose novel remains incomplete, because she got into doing a lot of political writing lately, got, I think, reinvigorated to start her, get back into her novel, which I told her I thought it was almost done. So kind of like, hey, why don't you finish it, please? But the cool thing was that we were able to give more insight into the characters that she was developing and their motivations, and give her encouragement to continue, clearly, but also insight into what the book represented for her, which I think that, if you want to talk about writer's block, it was kind of like, okay, the book based in the pandemic time, everybody was backed off. You felt like everything was happening somewhere else. And I mean, I certainly had this experience. I was like in a glass jar and the world was out there somewhere, right? And so this book kind of took that feeling to a new level. And I think maybe well, there's a different reasons, personal reasons and things why the writing was paused, but I think she's ready to move on to actually completing this project, which makes me happy because it's a really good book. And so and then I had some handouts that came from a workbook that I did for my life coaching years ago. And this time it was a module on completion. So when I gave the handouts, everybody started writing in the handouts, and it asks you some questions that are designed to make you uncomfortable so that you can grow through the discomfort. And after we'd been sitting there for probably 10 or 12 minutes, I said, we don't have to finish these. There's 10 pages here. This isn't a final exam, because I was getting uncomfortable reading my own questions and answering them. I was like, okay, that's enough. You can take these home and play with them later if you like. I mean, it's a good exercise, but I didn't want to spend all our time together, working on worksheets. It's too precious to do that. And then also there were a couple of handouts for making a strong paragraph and developing a character. And then when you and I started talking about developing some projects, I started going through my files, and I found that I have a number of different things that I've created about stuff like the author voice, PowerPoints, handouts, and whatnot. So I started getting excited about it and getting all the stuff organized so that it can come to life. Because then I started talking with somebody else about it, and she said, "Oh, I want to do that." And I went, this thing has legs, I mean, I should be listening here. So,
So
and I
do
don't really have an excuse to not do it. I love hanging out with people. I did find I was pretty tired by the end of the day because we got so involved with one another.
you have
And I'm not
77
used to
excuses.
talking to people all day long, a whole group of them. But I love it. I mean, I just really feel I'm a communication junkie, if you like. If given a chance, I will over communicate. And I got my opportunity and ran with it. So
I'm sorry, I have Chihuahua puppies in here. Normally the husband watches them, but he is unable. And so I have little
Chihuahua
guys.
puppies.
I have Chihuahua puppies in here and they're not behaving.
Oh,
So
I have a 15-year-old Chihuahua on my laps. So you have my sympathy.
you understand then. Okay.
Yes, I
You
do.
understand.
Chihuahua puppies are exhausting, but
Yes,
they're
they are.
darling.
They are. They're absolutely adorable.
Yeah.
And if I had known how much trouble they were going to be, I'm not sure I would have gotten, at least I wouldn't have gotten two. I have two.
Uh, yeah,
Ugh.
that's why I say you have my sympathy, because the one I picked him up as a rescue when I went to visit my sister, and he had been living on the street. These kids came around, and here was this dog, and I was like, if you don't take him, he's gonna die. So I took him, and then on the way home, I was going, what have I done? you know, but we saved each other. So yeah. But
Well,
two
I got,
chihuahuas, so a boy and a girl.
no, they're brothers. I got one I had just lost my Yorkie that I'd had for like 16 years.
Oh,
And then I got COVID and I was feeling particularly gloomy. I probably
yeah.
could have used all 77 of those excuses for just about everything because all I wanted to do was sit on my couch and watch bad Lifetime movies.
Mhm.
And but my husband made me get up and go for a walk. It's like, we're going for a walk. I said, okay, fine. Well, we got out to the trail and I'm like, I am not up to walking the trail. I'm just not. I said, let's just go walk around the outdoor mall that we have up here.
Mhm.
So we started to do that. We pulled in the parking lot, and across the parking lot comes this guy, and he has like, 7 or 8 little chihuahuas on leashes. And I'm like, that's weird. I thought maybe I missed like a dog show or something. So I was like, I'm gonna go ask him, because I had just started the podcast and I was looking for people. It wasn't
Yeah.
really firm yet. I knew I was going to do it, but it wasn't really firm as to what it was going to do, or what it was going to be. So I was like, he
Uh-huh.
might make a cool off podcast guest depending on what he does. Let me go talk to him. So I went over and I was like, why the puppies? Well, he sells them. He's a breeder, and he has um he brings them up and takes them around to socialize them before they go to their new homes, so that when they
Yeah.
go to their homes, they already are leash trained, and they're used to being out in public, and they're used to being around people, and they're used to riding in the cars, which I thought was a really cool idea. Well, while I was talking to him, there's this little big tiny one, and I asked if I could hold him, and he said yes. So I picked him up. He was the runt, and I was petting him. And then my husband walks up behind me and says, you can have him if you want him. Oh, just, particularly vulnerable moment, just being sick and just losing my dog. I was like, can I really?
Oh,
so
yeah.
so he went home with us, but we have 2 bigger dogs already, and cats, and even the cats were bigger than him. And he was
Uh-huh.
trying so hard to play with them all, and he was so tiny, and he couldn't play with anybody, because they wouldn't play with him. They're just like,
Mhm.
it's a bug, go away. So the
Yeah.
next thing I know, my husband's on the phone back down to the breeder. He needs a playmate his own size. Do you still have his brother? I'm
I
like,
see.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
If we had known, it's like having two-year-olds in the house again. If we had known, we might not
Mhm.
have done it. But now, I wouldn't give away for nothing. They're adorable. They're just
Yeah.
down here
Yeah.
chewing on my feet right now. But anyway. So I
Yep.
apologize for a little bit of looking down, and because they're chewing on my shoe, on my
No,
foot.
I'm
So
fine with it. Like I said, I get it about dogs. I've had many dogs. This is the first time I've had a little dog. Right before I had this guy, I had my daughter-in-law's Tibetan Mastiff for almost 3 years, which I did not ask for and did not volunteer to, but there he was. He came to the ranch and he was there. And he hated me for not being his mom. And I would always say, well, after you, the teacup, right? And then they came and got him because he was ill and they thought he was going to die. Guy lasted another 2 years, but that's another story. Anyway, so the next day I went out to my sister's place and found Jasper, who's sitting on my lap, was there waiting for me. And I was kind of like, wait, I'm down to 2 dogs. I'm good. Like this is, no, not really. And then I went, Betty, you've always wanted a little dog and he's here. And if you don't take him, you know what the shelter's going to do. So, like, get with it. So I did.
well, cool. All right, so we need to get back on track, because people who know me know that I go off on tangents very easily, and we could talk for
Uh-huh.
hours. However, the
Uh-huh.
podcast is new, and the podcast subscribers might be like, what the heck are they going? We got in here to talk about excuses, we've got into writing, and now we're talking about dogs. Okay, so
Oh,
let's
it could
get
be
back
worse.
on track.
Oh, I know. I've been on marketing podcasts where we ended up talking about potatoes for 20 minutes. So I get it. Let's not do that. But since you mentioned being tired, I opened the book when I didn't plan to do this, to excuse number 56. I am too tired to care about writing, creating, doing, or living.
Oh, I'm
You
never too
say this
tired to
when you
care
don't
about
feel like
living.
you are getting what you deserve and you are hiding from that feeling. Being tired happens and rather often. But how tired is too tired? That's a good question for both of us right now. Where is that place in your life and what does that mean to you? Are you tired because you've been kicking ass or because you have been avoiding yourself? These two kinds of tired have completely different characteristics and show up in your life as either energy that needs to be renewed or energy that has been dissipated. Are you tired of kicking yourself for not wanting to do something? How about if you decide that you don't have to want to do it and see what that looks like? What would you be willing to do if your life depended on it? When you don't feel like doing anything, do you do something anyway? How can you get rid of 3 things that you don't care about doing but have been kicking yourself for not wanting to do? So, this is again, the idea of this book is to get you to take action on the feeling that the excuse is bringing up for you. The feeling is there in its raw form as the excuse. I'm too tired. I could give a hoot, right? However, what's really going on there, and are you going to do anything about it? And when I wrote this book too, I took the approach that it's a very serious topic. So I got into humor about it because it's too serious to not make jokes. It just is too depressing if you don't make jokes. And then I started going, and the other thing is that either love me or hate me, and let's get that out of the way right now. Because if you don't like my approach, then we might as well know that, right? But if you do, then let's talk about, what's going on. So that is the excuse book.
Oh, cool. So if we absolutely love what we've heard tonight and we want to get your book, where do we get it?
It's on Amazon. I actually just redid it because I had someone purchase a bunch of copies to send to his clients, and he, not being a detailed person, didn't notice that there were errors in it, but one of his clients did. So I said, okay, take a hint, because I knew it wasn't perfect. I already knew that. So I went in and added more content to it. I corrected the typos. I revisited all the topics, which again, you know what? It's much easier to fix somebody else's book than to fix your own, just in case you didn't know that. But it's done, and it's on Amazon, and if you get it on Kindle, it's cheap. So,
Well, for us people who like that, the crack of the binding as you open the book and the smell of the ink on the pages.
mhm.
A
Yeah.
few other people, there's Kindle.
Yeah, yeah, and so you can actually have it either way or both. Up to you.
And if we're working on our book, or we have an idea for a book and we're using one of your 77 excuses to not write our book, how do we get a hold of you to coach us through the process?
You can go to the writerslaunchpad.com, where there's a link to schedule a conference with me, 30-minute complimentary, to talk about what you got going on and see if we're a good fit to work together. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, which I do a lot. You can find me on Facebook as well. And connect with me. I just about always say yes, especially I'll look you up and see who we know together, and let's talk. Yeah.
Okay. And you did mention that we had been discussing doing something together. So I'm pretty excited about it too. And you want to talk a little bit about that? Because apparently there's other people besides the ones I was thinking of that are interested. You found a lady who was like, I want to do that. So let's put it out there. Let's put it out there, because I'm a big believer in once you put it out there, it helps. It's more real once it's out there.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And, as a marketer, I mean, one of the things I do is write marketing copy. I was talking with an associate today about make a place for them to go before, and then do all the fancy work. But so I've been organizing it. I want it to be 5 modules where we go through the various elements of writing. And let me pull that folder out so I can remember what they are, because I don't. Module outline. Here we go. Um, it's kind of from start to finish. The first module is getting started. And what do you want this to do? What book do you want to write? How did you come to this idea? And what makes it important to you? That's the first module, is getting your thought process to gel. And from there we can start coming up with a method. The second module is gaining momentum. The basics of an outline, structuring your thoughts and plot points, your introduction, tips to gather ideas, The third module is keeping it going for motivation, efficiency, what happens when you hit the wall, which happens to every writer, even if you do it every day, as I do, you hit the wall. And getting feedback and incorporating critiques constructively. How do you do that? The fourth module is about wrapping it up, connections between chapters and sections, tying your ideas together, going back to your introduction, because the introduction is essential to having your book be coherent. And then, when are you done writing? The fifth module is about polishing and presenting, the editing process, formatting, agents, self-publishing, what's the difference, which is a good idea, and how do you go about doing each of those, with an overview of platforms and requirements and things like that. So those are the 5 modules I came up with. I have a lot of supporting material to go with them. And I'm excited about being able to bring it to a new level, because it's something that I just really love it when a person gets it. The favorite thing about all of it is when the author suddenly realizes the value of their work. It elevates people, and I can see it. I can actually see it happening in their face, where they're like, oh, I get it. I am more than I thought I was. I can do that. And, like I hear all the time, like, why would anyone want to hear my story? And then I've heard it from people who are like experts at the top of their field, people who have incredible stories of courage and resilience. And then they go, why did anybody want to know that? And I'm like, are you kidding? So when they do get it, and I can see that they get it, it's wonderful. It's really wonderful. And I mean, I've had people make tremendous changes in their perception of themselves and even in their life. One of my earlier coaching clients actually realized, when we started looking at his so-called writer's block, that he needed to completely change his profession, where he was at the top of one profession. He wasn't happy, went back to school and changed, and he's a happy guy now instead of being miserable, because he gained the vision of understanding who he really is. And that's the gift of writing, is when you start to really get who you really are and what you have to offer, and how you can connect that offering with the world. That's what writing is all about, for me. Yeah.
So it's your writer's retreat on in a virtual fashion. So for all of you ladies who are thinking about, like, oh, her retreat sounds wonderful, but you can't travel to California, we're going to bring it online to you. How exciting. How exciting.
Yeah. We're talking to you, lady.
Ah,
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast, and for persevering in so many ways.
it's been fun. It's been a lot of good information. I loved your book when I got it. I got it thinking that exactly what it says it is on the title, 77 excuses. And
Mhm.
you're right, in a way it is, if you want to use it that way. But
Yeah.
I really love the fact that it's not. It makes you really stop back and look at, what are you saying to yourself? And I love that. And that's why I wanted you on, because that is what the Rebel Tribe is all about. It's about helping women get past all that stuff and step outside the norm, that
Yeah.
narrow little path that we've all been on most of our lives, and to
Mhm.
do those things that we've always wanted to do. So when I
Yeah.
actually read it, I was excited. I knew I had to have you on. So
Oh, thank you
thank
so
you
much.
so much for coming. I appreciate it. And
Mhm.
if you like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, do all that stuff, because we're brand new and we're trying to grow. So you can help us out by doing all that. So thank you again, everybody. And thank you, Miss Betty.
I thank you, Miss Melodian.
And what happened?